Hey, Tracy.
Hi, Dean. How are you?
Welcome back. This is your third appearance out of 152 episodes, so it's always a pleasure to have you. Thanks for being part of this. Tell folks a little bit about you, and then I have a CEO-related question to get us started in the marketing world.
Sounds wonderful, Dean. And thanks again for having me on. So, I'm Tracy Wehringer. I'm the founder of Moonshot Strategy. And it seems that lately I've been hyper focused on small, mid sized companies, B2B, where I'm more of an architect and
Mhm.
a coach for these CEOs.
All right, then in that case, let's jump into a CEO question. So let's imagine it's day one of a brand new engagement, brand new client, brand new everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've talked to them leading up to somebody signed a piece of paper somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Jockey signed it and agreed to pay you. And so we're having our first sort of official meeting as
Mm-hmm.
now, like I'm officially your client. And I say, hey, Tracy, so you work with a lot more CEOs than I'm ever going to work with any kind of CMO.
Mm-hmm.
And so what should I start doing to make sure we get our money's worth from you in this engagement? And what should I stop doing as CEO so that you're not hampered by me?
And Dean, that's a fabulous question. Definitely during that engagement for signing the SOW, there's a lot of due diligence that's done then. But day one is creating that 90-day plan.
Mm-hmm.
And through that is auditing several different components of their business. It's understanding their market position, their competitive lens, and their data. And I talked about data at quite length in
Mm-hmm.
prior conversations, but looking at the marketing, sales, customer success data, and then doing some stakeholder interviews internally with different team members. So it's really auditing and focusing on that day one. Uh, and within that, really having that milestone check in with the CEO. And to answer your question about what to stop doing,
Yeah.
is generally a lot of times with CEOs that are small, mid size, they're hyper focused on the next shiny object
Mm-hmm.
and very tactical. So trying to turn them into that more strategic lens on why doing certain things, and not focusing on the next shiny thing.
So let's pretend that I'm a particularly wise CEO, which
Hmm.
I'm not
Hmm.
any kind of CEO. Let's pretend I'm particularly wise. And I say, hey, so following up on my question then for what I should stop doing and what I should stop doing, can you answer me this?
Hmm.
You come into a company like mine and tell me about like a green flag you like to see for a client that you've picked up, and tell me about a red flag.
I'm so sorry, Dean. Can you repeat that because I just lost connection for
Yeah,
some
no
strange
problem.
reason?
So um, imagine that I'm starting out as a fractional CMO myself. I'm not a fractional
Hmm.
CMO. You are, but I'm not.
Hmm.
And this person asks you, "Hey, so I'm just starting out, and I've worked in corporate my whole life, so I've never really had to think about like what a client is going to be like. What's a red flag when you're talking to a company where you're thinking like, that's probably not going to be a good client, and what's a green flag for a company or a prospective company client?
So, kind of going back to my answer prior about what to stay away with, or what is that big red flag,
Mm-hmm.
is avoiding the everything now syndrome, right? Where there's a lot of startup CEOs that are focused on let's do everything now um, instead of really being focused on what are those specific KPIs and what's the value that me as a CMO is going to bring to the table. So looking at those clients where they're green flagged are the CEOs that are willing to take advisory and take
Right.
that coach mindset and help them develop their plan not only for year one but beyond building that out, and then also understanding how they are with their team, because startups will hire a certain level of team of employees based on their skill set and their expertise as a startup. But as they grow and expand, they're going to need different team members, different skill set to really grow. So really understanding, their level of understanding that lens. Um, and clients that I would stay away from, or
Here
CEOs
we go. Here's the
that,
good stuff. Here's the juicy stuff. Go.
yeah. The CEOs that I stay away from is during the original engagement,
Right.
or developing that discussion of, is it a right fit, mutually beneficial for both of us, is understanding what their budget is. There's been many times I'm talking to startups that maybe are not backed by funding,
Right.
private equity or VC, and their approach is, oh well, marketing is almost a byproduct of sales, and
Right.
we really don't have a strong budget, or they really don't have a focus on their growth goals. If they're not metric or KPI mindset, just to do things, I definitely stay away. But it seems lately I've come across a lot of startups where they're looking at minimal budgets,
Right.
and you definitely need to have some deep pockets, to have that velocity for growth.
So, other than budgets, finish this question for me.
Hmm.
Or finish this statement for me. Many clients just don't understand what.
Retention.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, talks about a flywheel, creating that momentum for
Yeah.
growth. And a lot of the startups and medium-sized companies are such hyper focused on acquisition. Their marketing team is uh, focused on content based on acquiring net new customers. And what I've seen is the afterthought of retention. And my whole men- mission lately has been focusing on retention, but from a start. So beyond just looking at just the acquisition, the end goal of any retention is obviously lifetime value for revenue, but focus on retention to bring forth that your customers are going to be able to amplify your brand. Like if you do everything right after a closed one opportunity, you acquire them, they're onboarded correctly, and you're doing the NPS and some of the calls, customer success is reaching out to them just to make sure they feel loved by the brand, and as they get acclimated to utilization of the
Right.
systems or whatever they purchased, the goal is to have these people amplify your brand. They're the happy customers. And when you hyper focus on retention from a start, like think of the end goal of having them be your amplifier, you could change that buyer's journey and that content based on that end goal. There's a lot of companies that, when I peel the onion and I look through that process of onboarding and even put in NPS during that process automated, the NPS scores are very low because they don't feel the love. It's almost like they have buyer's remorse after they sign the contract.
Right.
So, yeah.
Good. Okay. Excellent. Now, you're talking to a lot of prospects. You're talking to a lot of companies. This is the nature of being a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And marketing is one of those subjects where everyone you're talking to feels that they understand it fairly well
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that they even know some stuff. And so as you're talking to people, what, ideas, concepts, strategies, tools, platforms, networks, whatever, right? What do they tend to talk about and you think it's completely overrated? And what do they not really talk enough about that you think is an underrated aspect of marketing or a tool or a platform?
So I would start out with what not, right? So
So underrated.
it's so underrated,
Mm-hmm.
and I call it the truth bomb, right? So talking to clients, talking to other fractional CMOs, I had a couple peers where they they've built their engagement to not thinking about how that company is going to move on after they're gone. So my whole structure is really building success, um, that when I leave, they're able to move on, right? They're able
Right.
to continue. So I had a couple of peers that they built such complex lead gen tools. They did not go through and provide, any type of training on those tools. They were the single point of failure. So
Yeah.
in that engagement, nothing was getting done without their buy-in, their decisions, their approval. And then the other aspect is tool overload. There's so many times where uh, between IT and the fractional CMO that they'll just build this such complex tool set, this tech stack, that when they depart, it just becomes a failure. So, making sure that on the flip side of that being that architect, being that coach, creating those blueprints, having that 90-day plan that's a rolling 90-day
Right.
plan, and building out the training, focused on the talent on board. It really helps to create that foundation and that ability to scale, that well-oiled marketing and sales machine. So when you step out or you help hire the full-time CMO, you can do that nice handoff and everything keeps rolling along.
All right. Tell me this. Imagine that you're on a stage. You're the key speaker. You're talking to
Mm-hmm.
250 people in the audience. Every one of them became a fractional CMO yesterday. Brand new.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
they're like freshly baked,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right out of the oven. Finish this statement for me of you talking to this audience. Guys, you're all fractional CMOs. You're just starting out. What you're going to be most surprised by is what?
I would say most surprised by the fact that there are times that CMOs are not looking at sales data. Uh,
Right.
so in my journey, and I've been doing this for 30 years, in my journey, there are so many times where I go in and look at sales data because marketing just doesn't stop at top of the funnel. We need to be partnered with sales, lock and step, to make sure from the old school sales funnel lens, from unaware of the brand all the way down to close one, that marketing has that insight and help and support through that process. And the one item that I look at that is a surprise to almost every engagement I've had in over 25 years is folks are not looking at the latency of stages in that process. So for instance, in one of my engagements, I was able to look at that sales stage, and
Right.
the whole plan is how fast you could realize funding, right? Revenue.
Right.
So going through as fast as you can. So looking at that, I actually took a sales funnel sales cycle time from 6.3 months down to 1.7 months because of doing that due diligence on the sales funnel. And I think that's one of the things that's a key aspect that people miss.
All right. And then the other thing to tell okay, so you gave your talk, you shocked them and smacked them around a bit, showed them a bit of reality. It's not all
Hmm.
like roses, and their phone's not going to be ringing off. Well, nobody's phone rings anymore, but
Nobody
except for spam
does.
calls, right? But
Exactly. Yes.
it's not all
Hmm.
inbound kind of thing, right? And
Yeah.
so that's part one. So in the Q&A, someone asks a really like cutting through the noise kind of question, right? Like,
Hmm.
how are fractional CMOs getting their clients these days? There's a lot more
So
fractional CMOs in a marketplace, whether they
it's
should be called
incredible.
fractional CMOs or not. And so, right, maybe they've never even been in charge of anything before. And so there's a
Hmm.
lot of people with the same title, shouting in the
Actually,
marketplace. How do
yeah,
you get
yeah.
clients these days?
So for me, it's leveraging prior clients, creating the referrals,
Mhm.
and for me, it's LinkedIn. It's really hyper focused on LinkedIn. Um,
What do you mean by that?
s- so
Exactly
reaching
what
out.
on LinkedIn?
Okay. So I have a universe of about 10,000 folks on my LinkedIn, and I've
Hmm.
been over the years focused on small mid-sized companies, CEOs, and then as well as in Sales Navigator, you could select
Hmm.
startups, and so a mixture between I should say a mixture between LinkedIn, using a system called Duck Soup,
Hmm.
which is a way of creating drip
Yep.
campaigns in your LinkedIn, and the other element too that I've been testing the waters with is the Apollo database, which is very helpful with
Mhm.
if I want to focus on private equity backed or VC backed, where they are in their startup to exit phase. So focusing on that, testing all that within HubSpot, sending out email campaigns, newsletters, and holding advisory sessions, free advisory sessions, just so they could see my background and experience and see if it's a good fit to move forward.
Is an
Um,
advisory session like a one-to-one or a
it's a one to
webinar
one.
or
It's
a
really a one to one. Yeah, an hour discussion,
sure.
understanding their pain points. Where do they think the defect is from realizing revenue. That's usually the number one item that I get in is, we're not realizing the revenue as quickly as we can, or my my marketing qualified leads or my sales qualified leads, they've really plateaued and it pretty much seems to be turning in a negative way, right? So how can I, what am I doing wrong? So there's a lot of those questions. I've actually had a couple calls from CFOs
Yeah,
that they see the numbers and they want to make changes confidentially.
right.
That they do want to make changes in house. So I've had a lot of advisory calls from CFOs to figure
Hmm.
out, if we're a good fit or not.
All right. All right.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's time to wind down. Usually we have two guests, but you're the only guest today. You're the star of the whole thing. So I'm going to offer something sort of a little unusual, and then we'll wind down. And so here
Sure,
it goes.
sure.
You can take this opportunity to sort of ask and answer any question that you think should have been like included or that people forget. I mean, I don't know why you would, but you could ask me a question if you wanted to, or else just sort of like make a statement, like guys, either the clients or fractional CMOs, if you're going to do anything in 2025, do X. So ask and answer a question yourself, or if you're going to do anything in 2025 as a fractional CMO, do this, or anything else you want to say. Anything. You
Anything.
might be the. I think you're the only third time guest, and the other third time guest was only on 2 episodes ago.
That's awesome.
And so,
That's
like, it's
terrific.
crazy that you've been here so often. It's fabulous that you've been here so often.
So, I think I want to really talk through a little bit more on my mindset of retention
Yeah.
and how that should be a focus for companies in general.
Okay.
So my feeling is, and I'm going to be writing a lot about this, is that retention is no longer an endpoint. It's really the engine of sustainable growth. And I know I talked a little bit about Jim Collins, A Good to Great, and
Hmm.
how he talks about this flywheel. And I'm looking at retention as this flywheel where there's relevance that you have when you create that momentum. It's all about compounding growth, and we all know um, that happy customers just continue with lifetime value. But there is, and I've seen a 10x revenue from utilizing these happy customers, right? Having them be your testimonials, their panels, your webinars, and having them sell your product.
Right.
Um, and you know, Zig Ziglar has that great quote that people will listen to you if they respect you, but they will do business with you if they trust you. And a lot of that trust comes from the third party people that validate your story. So, you know, I'm really looking at changing that mindset of that initial touch and how it relates to overall lifetime value. Um, so that's really, you know, something that I'm thinking about, and I am going for my doctorate. I'm in the process of
Mm.
going through that. I'm really thinking about how that aligns to a thesis and everything else. And I just remember, just I want to say it was probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, the CEO of Microsoft put out the statement on LinkedIn saying that SaaS marketing is dead. Like just because of AI, SaaS marketing is dead.
Right.
And and I, and that's what I started thinking about. Well, you know, there is momentum in that whole lifetime value and retention element where that's the whole thing of SaaS, right? It's just continuity of your weekly revenue. I mean, your monthly revenue, ARR, and all that. And so I put this response saying, well, I don't think it's just dead yet, you know. So it's pretty interesting. But I think there's a lot to take away with encouraging CEOs to really invest in retention as a core strategy, as a first thought, and not as an afterthought.
Right. All right. Excellent. So these days, who should be
Mhm.
contacting Tracy Wehringer and how should they do it?
So, Dean, yeah, so right now it seems like a lot of folks in small, mid-sized companies are reaching out to me.
Mm-hmm.
So my website is moonshot-strategy.com. And, you know, obviously I have Calendly on there so they can schedule meetings. But I would love to have even that hour advisory just to see if there's mutually beneficial work that could come out of it. Hmm.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for being here the third time now on episode 152. Crazy.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate the time as always. Hmm.
It's always nice to talk to you and a happy 2025.
You too.
And see you next time. I'm sure there'll
All
be a
right.
next time.
Thank
I
you,
can
Dean.
I can
Cheers.
safely say that with you. All right.
Yes,
Bye.
thanks. All right. Bye bye.